Those eyes disguise our hide. Bright lights decide the fight. Your heart beats fast despite the truth that love is blind. I just wanna feel anything, anything with you, with you. I just wanna feel anything, anything with you, with you.
Welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast with your host, Matthew M.
Hello and welcome back to the Clean and Filthy podcast, where we are clean and serene with a filthy mind in between. I am your host, Matthew M., and I am an addict in recovery. Welcome back, everybody. Like I said, episode 15. Pretty crazy to see where we started and where we're going. Huge thank you to everybody because we couldn't be doing it without any of y'all. Huge thank you to all the downloads. We've been getting more and more downloads. We're getting really close to that next milestone. So, again, constantly refreshing my Buzzsprout account, trying to get those last few. So please get them downloads in. Help support this channel. Thank you, everybody. Got to give a huge thank you and a huge shout out to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. If you are looking for any kind of event staffing or party staffing, or you're looking for a job, make sure to check out all of her information in the description below, and they can get you set up. Also, huge thank you to Valentino Khan, Alice in Wonderland, and Mad Decent Records for giving us the opportunity to use the amazing song Anything as our theme music. Huge thank you as always to them. And I have to give a huge thank you. We got another new one to our VIP supporters. These are the people that support this podcast on Patreon. And they are Alex B, Cindy, Stephanie, Shar, Clint, and Alex T. Huge thank you to all of you guys. As I always say, the money that I get on Patreon goes right back into this product. We're trying to find some ways to increase our viewers and our listeners and our downloads. And that is all because of donations from wonderful people like you guys. So if you're interested in becoming a VIP supporter on the Clean and Filthy podcast, you can always head over to the website, www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com. and get all of the information there. Our Patreon link is listed in the upper right corner with all the rest of the social medias. Head on over to there, make a donation to the podcast, and you will get one of these awesome Clean and Filthy podcast stickers sent right over that you can display anywhere and everywhere you like. Also, our VIP contributors are going to have first access to our merchandise that we are in the process of processing. The thought process behind. Too many words to process there. We don't have merch made yet, but we're planning the attack to make merch. So if you want to get first dibs on that, head on over, become a contributing, supporting member of this podcast. And we really appreciate it. Have to say what's up to everybody and anybody who is listening right now. If you're new, welcome. Hopefully you stick around, you hear something you like, and next week you won't be new anymore. And regardless, I'm so excited and so grateful. I am eternally grateful for everybody's support, everybody's continued support, sharing this podcast, liking, commenting, subscribing, tweeting, retweet, all of that. That's how we grow. So got to say what's up to anybody that's watching on YouTube right now. Hopefully that live chat's going. If you don't know, we broadcast live via YouTube every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. Arizona time. So we get a group of people going in the live chat, and it's a lot of fun. We kind of get a nice little community going there. So if you're listening at some other point on a podcast directory and you want to be a part of the live stream, head on over to YouTube, 5 p.m. Arizona time every single Tuesday. And if you are on YouTube right now, please make sure that you are subscribed to this channel so you get a notification whenever we go live. It also really helps our numbers. And if you don't mind, head over wherever you consume podcasts from. Make sure to throw us a download. Our numbers going up means we have a better opportunity for this podcast to get out to the world and we can help more people. So that is how we do it, because of everybody out there sharing and commenting, unsubscribing. I love you all. So let's keep it going. Also, if you don't mind and you hear something you like, maybe give us a rating. We like positive ratings. We like honest ratings. So hopefully you honestly think this is a 5-star product. And if you don't, let me know ways that we can improve so that we can get the best possible product out to anybody and everybody around the world. That is our mission here. So, before we get into our first segment, we have to talk about what we do, what we don't do, who we are, and all of that. Again, my name is Matthew M. I am an addict in recovery, and this is the Clean and Filthy podcast. We are a 12-step recovery-based podcast. Every single Tuesday, we are live on YouTube, as I just said, with our episodes available for download wherever you consume your podcast from. We are listed on all the major directories. Or if you don't really listen to podcasts on a directory, you can always listen to each episode from our website. Again, www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com for all that information. So again, I am an addict, and this is a podcast about 12-step recovery, but to stay in line with the traditions, I want to make sure that I am not speaking from a point of authority for any one specific fellowship, speaking on any kind of one specific meeting or a home group. So we will not be discussing those things in this podcast. I will not be discussing what my fellowship of choice is. I will not be discussing what my home group is, any of those type of things. I'm not going to be giving recommendations for a meeting to get to, or a recovery residence or sober living or a treatment center, because I want to make sure that at the end of the day, I'm staying in line with those traditions so I can carry a clear message of recovery without, any kind of speaking from any kind of authority. I will be sharing my experience, strength, and hope as what has worked for this addict in recovery. I will not be sharing, any kind of points of authority or points of totalitarian, this is the only way to do it. No, that's not what we're here to do. But if you have questions about how to get to a meeting or how to find a sponsor in a specific fellowship or what treatment center maybe to go to, please reach out to me at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com, and I would love to get you that information. But we won't be discussing it here on the podcast. We want to keep, an atmosphere of unity. We want to make sure to stay in line with traditions. And we really want to make sure that this podcast is a great opportunity for people to learn about recovery, learn about addiction, have questions about recovery, have questions about addiction. And hopefully all of us together can form that community to answer those questions and help get knowledge out there. Because at the end of the day, I know for myself personally, so much of my confusion about recovery or addiction in general was coming from a place of a lack of knowledge. So we want to build knowledge. We want to build a community. We want to have this be a place for people to come together and help each other and, make the world a little bit better than we found it. So that's what we do. Again, this is not going to replace going to a meeting or working steps or having a sponsor. That's not what this is for. This is really just supposed to be an added bonus to whatever recovery program you're already working in, and maybe an opportunity for people who aren't in recovery or who have questions about recovery to have those answered to feel more comfortable getting into recovery. So that's what we do. That's what we don't do. And just want to make sure that's out there and everybody's clear on what we do. But with that being said, let's get into our first segment of the week.
Let's head to the lab for some R&D, recovery and development.
That's right, y'all. We are in the lab for some R&D, recovery, and development. This is the segment of the show where each week we take a step, a tradition, a concept, or a spiritual principle from 12-step recovery, and we discuss it, and we go over the ins and outs about it and the kind of definition and how we work it in our lives as recovering addicts, and just give more information about it. Because honestly, the steps and traditions and these spiritual principles can be kind of difficult to understand, especially for an addict like me when I first came into recovery. You know, there were things that I didn't understand. There's things now I'm just now understanding with, you know, over 3 years clean that really do take a lot of work. So we're here to kind of go through those things and explain them, and, you know, hopefully you'll be able to have a better understanding and pick something up from it. But if you're sitting there and you are not an addict in recovery, that's okay. As I always say, the beautiful thing about recovery is that it's not simply about not using drugs. It's about finding ways and means to become better human beings. And the way that we do that is with the 12 steps and the 12 traditions, and by the spiritual principles that are within all of those, and how we utilize those and implement them into our lives. So stick around. Very possibly you might hear something that you like, and if you do, please make sure to share it with everybody and anybody. That's how we're going to grow. I am not above shameless begging for shares. Well, okay, I'm not quite begging yet, but we might get to there. So share, please, please, please. Hooray, thank you. All right, so I'm on one today. So we are in episode 15. And that means we are on tradition 3. So if you have not heard the other episodes of this podcast, I suggest checking them out. Our episodes were in order for the first 12 because they coincided with the 12 steps of recovery. And now we are into 13, 14, 15. So that means tradition 1, 2, and 3. I probably should have figured out a better way to do numbering on those. Because episode 24 is going to be about tradition 12, and the math in my brain is already looking like, wow, you should have done something better, bro. But we learn, we grow, we do better next time, right? All right, so episode 15, we are on tradition 3. What does tradition 3 say? It says, the only requirement for membership is the desire to be clean. And now this is a huge, important tradition within the fellowship. And I think so often it gets overlooked. So we're gonna dive into it. We're gonna explain what it means, the different nuances to it. But first, we got to talk about the spiritual principles that are vital within working this tradition. First off, we're talking about unconditional love. We're talking about compassion, empathy, generosity, patience, tolerance, acceptance, and open-mindedness, just to say a few. As we talked about before, the traditions are the graduate level type stuff within basic recovery. Steps are entry level. Those are your general prereqs. Can't talk. But the traditions, they get deep, and this is one of them. You know, it's only one short little sentence, but there's so much within it. First thing we have to look at is that word desire, because that desire is where this entire tradition is focused on. And really, that is the basis of our recovery, is that desire to stop using. Because at the end of the day, I'm proof of this, as are tens of thousands of addicts around the world. An addict who does not want to stop using will not stop using. You know, it says in the literature, it says an addict can be analyzed, counseled, reasoned with, prayed over, threatened, beaten, or locked up. But they will not stop using until they want to stop. The only thing we ask of our members is that they have this desire. And this is why we always talk about in recovery that we have to do recovery for ourselves. We have to want to change for ourselves. Because if we, are stopping for somebody else, for a significant other, for our kids to not go to prison, those are not topics or or points of focus enough for us to stay clean. They might help. They can be added benefit. I mean, one of the added benefits of me being in recovery is the fact that my son has never seen me loaded. But that's not the reason why I'm here. The reason why I'm here is because I personally had the desire. I needed to do something different. I had the desire to stop. And I've seen it so many times when, people will come into the rooms and will say, I'm getting clean for my kids. I'm getting clean for my wife. I'm getting clean for my parents. And so often, if that focus doesn't shift, it doesn't stick. Because so often we get so caught up in that we really don't want to stop ourselves. We really just want to stop to make somebody else happy. And it says everywhere in the literature that doesn't work. That for us to truly stop, we have to truly want to stop. And because this is the only requirement, because there's only one requirement for membership, is the desire to stop using, this means that no addict is superior than another. This means that, every addict can recover on an equal basis. There's nobody that's better or worse than. As we talked about, previously, there's no big I's and little U's. Everybody is even. And we'll get into how this really ties into unity as well. But it says in the literature that this tradition guarantees our freedom to recover. But it also says that this does not mean that we are members when we walk into a meeting or even when we stop using. Because becoming a member of the fellowship is a decision for that individual. And it is a very personal decision for some people. I know people that would come to meetings but wouldn't identify as a member of that fellowship. It took them a long time. It took them a long time to make that admission, to have that surrender, which we'll talk about a little bit further. But to make that admission and say, I'm an addict. I'm a member of this fellowship. So it's a very individual process. It's kind of like, the whole fact of nobody can tell us that we're addicts. We have to make that admission for ourselves. It's the same thing with this. Nobody can tell us we're a member. We have to make that admission for ourselves. And one of my favorite quotes out of literature regarding Tradition 3, it says, the price of admission is an admission. To be a member, we admit that we have a problem and we want to do something about it. Again, surrender. The surrender that we had in that first step when we said, I am powerless over the disease of addiction and my life is unmanageable. That surrender is the same surrender that we have to build off of within the third tradition. That same surrender carries through. But it also says, that within the literature, it says, that members can come freely and openly to a meeting whenever and wherever they want and leave just as freely. And this goes back to when the fellowships were first started. And the history behind it was at that point, it was illegal for two drug addicts to congregate together. So they had to do things in back alleys. And so part of the development of the fellowship was about being able to be out and open and say, this is who we are and we're trying to get better. So being able to do it openly and freely is a big thing. But also that part that says that members can leave just as freely. There's no initiation fees. There's no special handshakes. There's no like gang style jump-ins where we take a newcomer, throw them in the middle of the room and stomp on them. There's no brands or contracts. There's no hooded robes and animal sacrifices. There's no interviews. There's no resumes. There's no criteria of what it means to be a good member. It says in the literature, it says, whether our commitment to the fellowship is shallow or profound, above all, it is ours. It is ours individually to say, I am a member. And when I say I'm a member, my membership in the fellowship is secure. I don't say I'm a member and then, 3 months later, some old timers are like, no, you're out. You're not a member anymore. No. We are a member when we say we are a member. And we're not a member when we say we're not a member. Simple as that. There's nothing else to it. There's nothing else other than I am a member when I say I am a member. And I genuinely have that desire to stop using. And once we have that security within our membership, we can be honest about who we are. And it gives space for everyone to be a member. This is why the statement that you'll hear a lot is that unaddict, any addict. And we truly mean that. Because it says in the literature, it says that every member has a right to recover in dignity and be treated as an equal. And that's a huge thing. Like, what other type of organization is everybody based on the traditions treated as an equal? Now, does that mean that it always happens? No. Does that mean that there aren't still unspiritual, judgmental type of thought processes? Yes, that happens. But that's because humans are humans and they're not perfect. If every single meeting followed every single tradition, then that probably wouldn't happen. But the traditions, as we talked about before, are a guidebook. They're a blueprint for how to properly proceed. But that doesn't mean that sometimes those things don't happen. And I mean, even when there's an unspiritual judgment or whatever, we are still a member. Even if somebody doesn't like something I say or do, I'm still a member. I'm still just as valuable as that other person who maybe didn't like what I said or did. I'm still a member, and nobody can take that away from me. And this can be difficult. When somebody maybe isn't recovering how I feel they should, or they aren't the type of member that I think they should be. And I dealt with this a lot early on. I dealt with this a lot early in my recovery because I was super all in. I was super all in. And as we talked about before in that quote earlier, where whether our commitment to the fellowship is shallow or profound, above all, it is ours. And well, mine was profound. It was all in deep. And when I would see other people that maybe started off that way and then would start to falter a little bit, I would start to get judgmental. I would start to feel like, they're not recovering right. They're not doing it right. They're not working the right program. But it says in the literature, it is never our job to judge another addict's desire for recovery. It's never our job. Because if I'm operating in my higher power's will, I would never be judgmental. Because my higher power's will isn't for me to judge somebody, isn't to be negative towards somebody. That's not how it works. So not being judgmental and instead employing compassion towards that person, getting rid of those expectations, having anytime that I have an expectation on somebody else or somebody else's recovery, that is my shit. That is shit I have to work through. And there'll still be times that happens today, especially during the pandemic. Especially during the pandemic when I see members that, weren't around how I felt they should be, or weren't going to meetings the way I felt they should, or weren't being, safe, quote unquote, regarding the COVID, pandemic in ways I felt they should. Those were my things. And one of the beautiful things is now being able to notice that before those expectations and those judgments would lead to resentments towards that person or feeling some type of way, that today I don't have to do that. Today, I can acknowledge them as areas that I need to work on. And that really is, it's such a beautiful thing. And that's why we use this, the phrase keep coming back, because there can be times where members will be around for years and can never string together clean time, or they just keep coming back and keep coming back. But that's not on us to judge. That's not on us to judge. Well, they must not really want recovery. They don't really want to stop. No, that's not my place or anybody else's place to say. We can't judge somebody's level of desire. And the same thing for a member who maybe has never relapsed. That doesn't mean they're better. We are all simply members, period. And this, again, something else I personally have struggled with. I had a sponsee who kept relapsing and over and over. And I started, doing the unspiritual, like taking it to heart that, I started like projecting things, and it was unhealthy. And I was also very early on in my spiritual growth. So, those things happen. But what I love is that if we are following the tradition correctly, it doesn't matter how often somebody relapses. We hope they never do, but if they do, they're still a member. You're not like, oh, I'm a member until you hit 10 relapses, and now all of a sudden you're like a second-tier member. No. You are a member when you say you're a member, regardless of what else occurs. And I can say for myself, when I was early on sponsoring, and I had a sponsee that kept going back out, and there was this almost this unspiritual moment of like, God, do I really want to do this again? Do I really want to spend the energy on this person when this is the fourth time that we do work together and then they go back out? Do I really want to? And the thing is that even in that moment of not really wanting to, it's what we do, because that member is just as important as the next member, is just as important as any member. Every member is just as important. And that, it says in the literature, it says we can make an effort to increase our compassion for those who don't match our expectations or whose recovery doesn't look like our own. Again, another opportunity to look at how I can grow in a situation and how a situation can impact my recovery. Because at the end of the day, our primary purpose is to carry the message to the addict who still suffers, to be welcoming, always be helpful, and have that unconditional love, to be there for any addict. No matter how many times they've relapsed, no matter if they aren't working the program I think they should be working. We don't judge. We are there offering our experience, strength, and hope, and carrying the message to the addict who still suffers, regardless of who that addict is. So being welcoming, even like the smallest thing of inviting a newcomer to go to coffee, those little types of connections can be what the true spark is that sets off somebody's recovery journey, because we never know when that miracle is going to happen. One of the things we say is don't leave before the miracle happens. And we never know when that's going to be. I know multiple people personally. One of them, he celebrated 3 years clean today, that I watched, that wasn't able to get more than a week or two, maybe then a week, and then maybe another, and then a relapse, and then a relapse, and then a relapse. But he kept coming back, and he was loved unconditionally through it. And this motherfucker he just got 3 years today. Another buddy from Vegas, I knew from treatment, same thing. He couldn't get it going. He'd get a little bit of time, and then he'd fall back, and he'd get a little bit of time, and then he'd fall back. And now he's ingrained deeply into recovery, because we never know when the miracle's going to happen. So if I'm going to be judgmental and be like, oh, I'm not going to help that motherfucker, he keeps relapsing, then that could lead to the miracle not happening. That's not my place to do. My place to do as a member is to value and carry other members, to love unconditionally other members. That's literally what it is, and so that even if we do harm, which happens, even if we are unspiritual, we are still members. Period. And this gives security, knowing that the fellowship will always be there for us, no matter what. And that security leads to connection and leads to belonging. Connection to people that I would have never been connected to in the past. And that connection occurs from unconditional love, from having that commonality of being a member together. Because there are plenty of people that I love, but I do not like within the fellowship, because I respect them and I love them as a member of the fellowship. And that would not have happened if without that connection, without that initial connection that came from membership in the fellowship. But the part that really stuck out to me when I was preparing for this episode was the discussion within the tradition, where it says that people are free to leave at any time. And it's so interesting how things show themselves in recovery when you really need them to. And this is something I've talked about before that's been prevalent in my life lately. And that's been members that, have been a part of my life, most of my recovery, who are no longer members, who are saying that they don't need to be in recovery or they are no longer a part of the fellowship. And I never really looked at the writing within this tradition where it says they are free to leave just as easily. And it's been difficult. But it says in the literature, it says, we don't have the power to determine who will stay clean. But we do have some ability to determine who will hear our message and how they will be welcomed. Every single person that comes into recovery isn't going to stay in recovery. But if we carry a unified, welcoming atmosphere of recovery as members of that fellowship, then they're much more likely to continue coming back. But that doesn't mean that they're going to stay. And that doesn't mean that in the future they aren't going to leave. And that's just a fact. That is just a fact of recovery. This tradition, the point of it is to make sure that the doors stay open both ways. Seeing that I really, must remember this fact. Like that's what was so interesting about when I was reading this. It was like, wow, this really hits close to home. This really is so tied into everything that I've been going through recently with people that have been leaving the fellowship. Because of course, I don't want them to leave. I don't want them to potentially die. But I start realizing after reading that so much of my feelings about certain people leaving the fellowship comes down to levels of fear, comes down to sadness, comes down to levels of loss and like grief. But the tradition flat out says that members say they're members when they, become members when they say they're members and can leave just as freely. And I have to remember that. The third tradition, I love this. It says the third tradition asks us to examine our motives and beliefs, our trust and ability to love, our open-mindedness, willingness, faith, and courage in carrying the message. And so when somebody leaves, all I can do is continue carrying the message because maybe at some point they'll become a member again. Maybe they will have the desire to stop using again. And if or when that happens, we will be there in that room with the doors open, greeting them with a hug. Because I don't ever want to see anybody leave. But after, really understanding this tradition and implementing it into my life, I realize that is the freedom of the fellowship. That's what it is. So I can't feel any kind of, specific way to it because it's what the tradition says. So if I'm living based on the traditions and not in my own wants and will, and I'm living based on the spiritual principles within it, then I have to be accepting of that. I don't have to like it. I can still be sad about it, but I can't form judgments about it. And one of the most important things, in my opinion, about the third tradition, and it's often overlooked, is the level of unity that is so very important within this. I like how short the wording is of the tradition. It's not we have some traditions that are like a paragraph long when we're reading the title of it. But it's not that. It is concise, and doesn't have much else to it. Desire to stop using. Done. That's it. Boom, boom. That's it. And that, I think, is often, especially in the current type of atmosphere of recovery, no matter what fellowship it is, there starts to be elements where that is kind of overlooked. And it's like, oh, okay, well, you're a member, but you're less of a member because of this. Or okay, yeah, you're a member, but you're not really a member because you're still using this. But that's not our job. And this can get very difficult. This can get very difficult at times when doing service work or doing things, especially, I do a lot of work within public relations. And there are some major things going on within drug treatment. And one of the most major ones is drug replacement therapy or medically assisted treatment. And that can be difficult to understand because, the fellowship says that is a program of complete abstinence. But more important than that, you are a member when you have the desire to stop using, period. It's not you're a member when you have a desire to stop using and you're not on medically assisted treatment. It's not you're a member when you say you're a member, and it occurs once you have this out of your system. It's not saying that. And it can get difficult. It can get difficult to understand. It's still something that can be confusing to me. That's why I try to read as much as I can about these new, issues that pop up that make things a little confusing, that make things a little like, so wait, what is the spiritual way? What is the tradition that I go to? And the third tradition is always the one that is brought back. That is the one that is always that, membership qualification, period. This is it. Do you want to stop using? Yes. Okay, you're a member. That's it. That's it. And that's why being welcoming to all members, it says in the literature, it says that being welcoming to all members requires checking our reservations about the recovery of others. They might take a medication that we have opinions about. They may be criminals. They may look at us in a way that gives us the creeps, but they are still members. And we treat each other as members. And that doesn't mean, again, that doesn't mean that we're best friends with everybody. That doesn't mean that we like everybody. But when we are in a meeting, we are all equal. We are all members, period. Nothing more than that. And, that comes up a lot, especially in my home group. My home group has a lot of newcomers in it. And a lot of the newcomers that are coming in, are coming in from a treatment center with a medically, assisted treatment, a drug replacement therapy. And so often topics will come up where we have to always default to tradition 3. Tradition 3, tradition 3. That's what it is. Sometimes it's like, don't pass go, don't collect $200, tradition 3. That's what we go to. Because when we keep that in mind and we keep that unity in mind, it allows us to all simply be members regardless of our past, regardless of our closed-mindedness. It's a situation that I talked about in a previous episode where there's a guy threatening to kill my life. Kill my life. Wow. Wow. To end my life. To kill my life, bro. Wow. But there was a guy threatening to end my life. And when that person showed up with the desire to stop using, we welcomed him. And when somebody says, oh, I'm not fucking with him because of that, I'm saying, no. We are members. He's a member. We need to respect each other. We need to love each other. And that doesn't mean that fuck shit doesn't happen. That doesn't mean that unspiritual things don't happen. Because they do. They do a lot. They do a lot in any situation around the world. Any business, any corporation, any basketball team, fellowship, recovery fellowship. There's going to be fuck shit that happens. But no matter what the fuck shit is, you don't lose your membership. You are still a member. And that's so important. Nobody can take away my membership to the fellowship. Nobody can. that is mine till the day I die. Or, God forbid, to the day I decide that I'm not a member anymore. Nobody can take that from me. And that gives me such a level of security and such a level of not having to deal with, the difficulties that come up with personality sometimes. If I can keep that security and living by those principles, then it's not, I don't have to live in fear because I know I'm secure. I know I'm safe. And I'm going to close with this quote that I really like. It says, "Our willingness to act in a spirit of unity and service opens the door for all addicts who care to join us." All addicts. That's why we always talk about it doesn't matter who or what you are, what you used, how much or how little. Doesn't matter your age, race, sexuality, religion, color, creed, sexual orientation. None of those matter. You're not a this member. You're not a that member. You're not a this substance member. You're a member. Period. And that's all it has to be. So that's what we have for Tradition 3. Next week, we're going to be getting into Tradition 4. And like I said, traditions are a lot. There's a lot to them. There's a lot more within Tradition 3. But I want to make sure that, we don't go too deep within this, that we give some basic understanding, clear some things up, make it so that it can be, somewhat bite-sized. Because if not, I know for me personally, with over 3 years clean, all about the literature, all about doing step work and tradition work, doing the traditions is a lot. It is a lot. I love doing step work. Doing tradition work takes a lot more mental effort. So does going over them. So I don't want to bore anybody or go too deep here.
Phrasing?
I said too deep so many times I had to hit one there. So that's what we have for Tradition 3. Join us next week when we go over Tradition 4. And now we are on to my favorite moment of the week. And so this is the part of the show where we discuss something that has occurred over the last 7 days. And it might be something in pop culture. It might be something from the world of sports. It might be something from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It might be something from Instagram. It might just be my favorite thing I saw on Instagram. It might be from TikTok, but I'm still not on TikTok. I will be on Pornhub before I am on TikTok just for today. Send me them TikToks. So this is just, my opinion on stuff. I like talking and I like, having common things, common interests that people like as well. So this is my fun part of the show here. My experience, strength, and hope, but a lot of my opinion. So if anything pops up over the next week, something crazy on Instagram, send it over to me. Again, my Instagram account is listed on the website, www.CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com. Instagram button, Twitter button, Facebook. Send me memes, send me stories. Maybe it'll be, my favorite moment of the week. So, again, had these great plans for this week. I was so excited because it was the Monaco Grand Prix in Formula One. Oh, I was so excited to talk about this because Monaco in general is supercar, hypercar heaven. You got Bugattis and Paganis and Koenigseggs just driving around like they're a fucking Altima out, like an Altima in Scottsdale. So I've always loved Monaco. And when you see what occurs when the Grand Prix is in town, it's like all of that shit on a billy. Like you've got more hypercars in front of one hotel than some countries will ever see. You've got more $100 million yachts with, European footballers and the A-list of A-list actors just vibing. So I was so excited. It's my favorite. It's my favorite track. I've always liked road courses more than actual, racetracks. Even though there's not as many DRS zones, there's not as much passing, but the history of it and just I love Monaco. Saying it right now, I will drive that hairpin. And I will open it up full throttle with something at least 8 cylinders or twin turbo V6 possibly in that glorious tunnel, the most legendary tunnel maybe in the world, but for sure in Europe, except maybe the tunnel. I don't know. I'm not going to argue tunnel relevancy in Europe right now. But for me, that tunnel in Monaco, whew, like literally it gives me goosebumps. But sadly, not only did Mercedes do horribly, but so did Lewis Hamilton. Qualified outside the top 6 for the first time in a bunch of races, and between car issues with Bottas and bad pit strategy, Mercedes was horrible, and Lewis Hamilton is no longer leading for the season. So shout out Max Verstappen, great run. Cool, move on. One little personal thing that was fun. So my son, we bought him one of those drivable Toyota Tundra trucks, and for the last 8 months, he's refused to get into it. Side note here, the first time that I was driving it around, it's remote controlled, which is pretty cool because it's just a big RC car for me. I may have possibly, not saying I did, but I may have possibly crashed into him accidentally, obviously. And there might have been some trauma involved. Maybe that's why he never wanted to get into it. But he got into it, and he was jamming music, and it was fire. It made me happy. Cool. Got to talk about the PGA, 103rd PGA Championship in Kiawah Island, South Carolina, ocean course. Legit looked like Hawaii. I'm going to say I went out and hit some golf balls, and I was feeling myself. And then I look at a course like that, and I'm like, I would lose every ball ever. Like even my best shot would be in the water somewhere. Like my best shot. So it humbled me just watching it. But got to give a shout out to Phil Mickelson, yo. ASU guy, Sun Devil represent, which is just a cool dude. That scene when he's walking up the 18th green, like whoever was on crowd control at that course needs to be fired. To the point like the PGA commissioner, chair, president even came out and was like, yo, y'all got it fucked up. Like, because it was nuts. It was pandemonium. Absolute pandemonium. But shout out to Mickelson winning his 6th major, wins in 4 different decades. He hadn't won since 2019 and hadn't won a major since 2013. He hadn't even been in the top 20 for the last 17 events. And now he's the oldest dude in history to win a major, 2.1 milli. Well done. One of the greatest scenes of it was seeing all the different players who all were waiting around after their rounds were already done just to congratulate him. Really kind of speaks to the type of dude that he is. So shout out Mickelson. Well done. I'm blown away by it. Gotta say rest in peace to Paul Mooney, man. One of the best things on one of the best shows, in my opinion. He was a writer and an actor, a part of the Chappelle Show. He was also a head writer for the Richard Pryor Show and gave a bunch of comedians their start, like Robin Williams and a bunch of other people. He also wrote for Sanford & Son in Living Color and for SNL. So rest in peace to him. Started watching MODOK on Hulu. Definitely not MCU quality, but the first episode was entertaining, so shout out to that. But our actual favorite moment of the week, and how could it not be? I mean, this segment of the week pretty much is rotating between Marvel and NBA, and then Marvel and NBA. And then when the NBA is done, we'll probably throw some NFL in there. But the opening weekend of the playoff show, hell yeah. It's lit. God damn. So first I was just going to talk about the opening play-in game between the Lakers and Golden State. That's what we were going to talk about, just like a little moment. And then we were going to find, another favorite moment of the week, because there were a bunch that occurred this weekend. But then when the rest of the games delivered through the weekend, we're only going to talk about the games through Sunday, because technically there were some games yesterday. We're filming on a Tuesday, so there were some games yesterday. But we're not talking about those. We're just going from the opening playing game to Sunday. And to start it off, like that Lakers Golden State Warriors game, it's the most watched basketball game since 2019, averaging 5.6 million viewers. That's huge. Steph chefing up 37 points, and LeBron, not only with a triple-double, but dropping that maybe luck, probably luck, definitely skill, Steph Curry range 3 to win the game. Nuts. Followed, then poor Golden State here, but followed by the overtime game between the Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors. Ja Morant is the truth. Like, for real. 35 points in that game. Steph with 39 points. Again, second highest viewing NBA game of the season with 3.6 million. But Golden State couldn't get their threes to drop, and they're officially out of the playoffs. And we're doing this, chronologically in time here. Seeing that Steph with the towel over his head was really sad. Sorry, Steph. You and Clay will be back next year and probably destroy everything. So whatever. And then we get into the actual games. And that first Heat-Bucks game, not only was it a back and forth the whole time, not only did the Heat really look like the Heat from last year, but then it goes to overtime. And I mean, Jimmy Buckets coming up clutch. Love him. But Chris Middleton hitting it in overtime. And then, I think that was really the chance for the Heat to just jump out. If they could have won that first game, I think they would have had a much more attainable shot. I don't think they're doing anything. I think they'll be out in 5. Just saying it. Next, we got Luka Magic. Luka Doncic, another triple-double. He's had 7 playoff games, and 5 of them have been triple-doubles. So Clippers, kind of looking like the Clippers in the playoffs again, which I'm all right with. But that ferocious dunk from Kawhi, where he straight caught a body, and then Paul George and I think it was Morris were all just standing there like staring at the dude. That reminded me of old school NBA. I miss those days. Like the days of like Sean Kemp straight Rain Manning on a dude and then going, ha, pointing at him. I miss those days. I mean, yeah, it's complete taunting and probably unspiritual, but it was fun though. I can't front. Next up, we went to Portland versus Denver. Dame time. Also, Carmelo back in the Nuggets arena and shutting the crowd up. And even though, Jokic had a great game, nobody else really could do much. Portland wins. Crazy. Okay. Brooklyn, big 3. First time, or the 8th time all season they actually get to play together. And they won. What do you fucking expect? 3 out of the top 6 players in the league, and they won. Playing against a Celtics team that essentially has 1 player left. Whatever. I want them to lose, even though I love Steve Nash. I want them to lose, mainly because whoever comes out of the West is going to have a lot easier trip if they don't have to face Brooklyn and that 3-headed monster. Then we get to the Lakers-Suns game. And I was worried when LeBron hit that shot from, 400 feet right with Steph in his face to make it the Suns versus the Lakers. I was scared. I was definitely feeling some kind of way. But the Suns came out and looked pretty damn good. Booker with 34 points, CP3 fighting through an injury, like putting a couple shots in there with the most ugly shot ever because his shoulder was messed up. And there was that feeling, what I love, there was that feeling of like throwback LA Phoenix series, like that Raja Bell moment when he straight clothesline Kobe looking like fucking Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair. Woo! Clotheslining and shit. It was kind of like that. It was testy. It was very testy. And I gotta say, this game is like the first time that I actually can tell you truly that Jay Crowder and Montrezl Harrell are not the same person. Because Jay Crowder, I've always liked him. He's been on the Suns. Half the time, I still call him DeMarre Carroll. Half the time, I still call him Montrezl Harrell. They're both, like all 3 of those dudes are like 6'6" and 240. So I'm still not completely convinced that they're not the same human being. Might be some type of simulation theory, hologram type thing. I don't know. Because all 3 of them play a very similar type of game. I like all 3 of them. So that was fun. Having both of them in the same series, that was fun. Great game 1. Game 2's tonight. I'm very excited about it. I'm also scared because LeBron played meh. AD played like boo-boo. And that's not going to happen over a 7-game series. I am definitely scared, but it's nice to get game 1. Then we get to the game between the Hawks and the Knicks. And now this is a big deal because the Knicks have been absolute dumpster fire trash for a very, very, very long time. Like trash, McTrashy, trash. And things are finally starting to look up in New York. You're starting to see a happy Spike Lee. You're starting to see a Spike Lee who's, riding again. Rather than get rid of James Dolan, burn everything. We've got, some Knicks doing some things. And seeing a full Madison Square Garden, a full stadium with actual human beings, it was a beautiful sight. Personally, I still don't know how I feel about it. But it was a beautiful sight to see. And hearing that intensity and having a Knicks team in the mecca of basketball actually doing something. But goddamn Trae Young, yo. Trae Young and those fucking floaters, he's a problem. Like, it's not even like shooting from Steph's distance. It's shooting from Trae's distance at this point. And he's so quick. And then he'll just go, boop, hit a little floater. And, yeah, next thing you know, absolute heartbreak for the Knicks. To the point that I thought it was kind of funny that Mayor Bill de Blasio, actually made a video telling Trae Young to stop worrying about hunting fouls. Bill, you've got some more pressing things occurring in your state. Just so you know. Do better. Okay, that's what I needed to say there. But I will say, RJ Barrett, D Rose looked like great, even though Julius Randle played like shit, and it was really fun. I was going back and forth Snapchatting with one of my boys who's a Knicks fan, and his heartbreak, I felt it. Like, I really felt it. Especially after he was talking shit about the Suns earlier. Yeah, like they was going to get swept. Fuck out of here. All right, last game that we got to talk about. The Jazz versus the Grizzlies. Number 1 seed Jazz going against the number 8 seed Grizzlies that had to play and win 2 games to even get into the playoffs. And the Grizzlies balled out. Okay, we have to acknowledge the Jazz didn't have Donovan Mitchell. I get that, and Spider is a problem. But I don't think this is as much about the Jazz losing as much as I feel like it was the Grizzlies winning. Like, Ja Morant's quickness, Ja Morant's floaters as well. Like, he was really, really, really playing well. And, the Jazz are known for hitting three-pointers, and they weren't. And it's, we've seen it before where a team that lives by the three-pointer isn't hitting those three-pointers. Things are difficult. So, that was a beautiful game. What I loved so much about this entire weekend was that every single game was exciting. Even the games that ended up being somewhat of a blowout were still exciting. And maybe it was the fact that there's some fans in the stands. Maybe it's the fact that we aren't playing in a bubble. Maybe it's the fact that it looks like there's some light at the end of the pandemic tunnel. I don't know. But it felt so much more hype than things did, last year during the bubble. And still, shout out to the NBA for doing the bubble and making something happen. But this feels so much more, regular. And the games were absolutely amazing. But I have to say, one of the greatest parts of it, I would say the biggest takeaway of it, and I was talking with an addict about this, is the fact of how these young Bucks in their first game, their first playoff game, were just balling out. Like Trae, Ja, Devin Booker, playing like veterans, playing like, people who've been there before. I've never played a playoff game in the National Basketball Association, sadly. But I can imagine that shit's pretty hardcore. I can imagine the lights are pretty bright. I can imagine that something happening to Julius Randle, not playing too well in his first playoff game, is acceptable. And these dudes in their first playoff games came out and smashed shit. Straight dominated shit. And it was amazing. So my absolute favorite moment of the week was a collection of moments over the weekend. It's kind of what we do here. I'm way too indecisive, and too many things make me happy to just have one. Unless we, every week I'm going to see a Bugatti Chiron again. Like, other than that, like, pretty much everything is going to be a collection of moments because I like stuff. Things in life make me happy. So that's what we got. Next week, we'll have another moment of the week. So if you have anything like TikToks that you want to send over, especially TikToks, to have me check out, maybe be part of my favorite moment of the week, like TikToks, please send them over to Matthew at CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com or directly send them to me on any social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, probably soon TikTok. Yeah, just all those. So that's what we got. And check back next week for the next moment of the week or moments. So now it's time for our next segment.
It's time to Ask an Addict with your host, Matthew M.
That's right. In this segment of the show, we answer questions from our listeners and our viewers. It is called Ask an Addict. I am an addict. Ask away. This is the part where, I give some experience, strength, and hope, but I'm also going to throw in some opinion. I'll let you know what that opinion is and when it's opinion. But this is just an opportunity to answer questions. They don't need to be recovery related. I just like answering questions. So please, if you have any questions about recovery or about addiction or about whatever, this is like a Reddit Ask Me Anything. So ask me anything. If you have questions, make sure to either send them over directly to Matthew at CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com or on any social media platform. I love having questions to answer. So if you have any questions, ask away and I will answer them. So the first question came in asking for somebody who's kind of new, still new in recovery, and says, how do you deal with very strong cravings, especially early on in recovery? And that's something that, a lot of people really do struggle with. I was so blessed that when I got to the point where I went to treatment, I was using so little that the withdrawal process was much quicker than I expected. And I really had that ferocious craving element removed pretty early on. But it definitely still there's still times that I would get a craving. And I wouldn't even really classify it as a craving anymore. Just like we were talking about, like from a trigger perspective, I wouldn't even say that I'm like triggered with a lot of things anymore. But there's still those elements where it's like, wow, that would be nice right now. That would be nice. But we've talked about it before, wanting to use and the need or the craving to use are two separate things. And so much of that just comes with time. And sharing about those feelings and expressing how those things are making us feel and being open and honest and sharing about them. One of the greatest things I see in a meeting is when somebody with, clean time is honestly sharing that they feel like using. Because those are the type of things that people need to hear. That once you get to 5 years, you're not just immune from it. Those thoughts and those feelings and those desires can pop up. But the way that we deal with them is by finding something constructive. For me personally, it was finding something other than using. And a lot of times, especially early on in recovery, it wasn't always a healthy option. There were a lot of times that I would want to use, and instead I would have sex, I would eat too much, I would vape incessantly, I would, send pictures of my dick, doing things that aren't, healthy ways to process. But they were whatever in that moment got me out of that desire. And there was a lot of days of watching porn. And more than a couple dick pics sent. That's just being real. That's just being real. Because those were all things that I wanted to use to escape that feeling. I had this feeling of wanting to use, usually because of a feeling. And so instead, I was using something else to escape that feeling. And it was just such an incessant, perpetual cycle. But I didn't use. And because I didn't use, I stuck around. And by sticking around, I started to learn healthy ways, healthy options, healthy chances to walk through those cravings. Calling somebody and sharing about it and saying, wow, I really feel like getting loaded. This is how I feel. And then looking at why I felt that way, because usually there was some reason. Usually it wasn't just, I woke up and just felt like smoking meth. That usually there were sometimes those things as well, but most of the time when I had a craving, it was tied into some other feeling. It was tied into some other element more than just, okay, I just want to use. And so identifying those things and never going through them alone is how we do it. It's how we move further away from that last use. And I can tell you personally, my experience, strength, and hope is that the further away we are from that last use, the further we are away, the less those cravings occur. It's just like when it comes to using dreams. The further we get away from our last use, the less that those using dreams have an effect on us. The further we get away from our last use, the less that these, cravings become almost unbearable. And that's why there are times, and we say it so often, especially early on in recovery, that put yourself on a 5-minute basis of not using. Just go 5 minutes, because 5 minutes will turn to 10. And again, I'm not saying it's healthy, but I watched a ton of porn and serviced myself far too much when I was early on in recovery rather than using. Healthy? Probably not. In the moment, it worked.
That part.
And I'm here to say that I'm still clean. So those elements within healthy sexuality, we're going to talk about a lot more in the future. So just keep that in mind. That's when the clean and filthy part of this really gets to the filthy side. I know I've had people asking, like, when's this going to get all filthy? Don't worry, it's going to get filthy. So that's the best way I could say for dealing with cravings is to talk about them, share about them, never go through them alone. Always have meetings, sponsors, recovery, friends, people you can talk to. And that's just what we do. We don't go through those things alone because at the end of the day, our disease wants us to succumb to those cravings. Our disease wants us to say, no, we need that. We have to have that. It's okay. Just one time. All you need is that one time. It's going to be okay. You're only going to do it once. That's it. That's what our addiction wants to occur. And the way that we don't succumb to those things is by having a bag of tools of recovery, going to meetings, calling your sponsor, working steps, reading the literature, finding something else to do with your mind. Because I know for me, especially early on, when my mind would be chilling, just chilling there, doing circles, that's where things could get difficult. That's where the urge could really build. So finding those things that we can do to not live within that is how we grow. So that's what we got for that question. Next question. This is an interesting question. It says, have I ever been afraid I was going to die while using? And, this is something that an addict like me who used like I did, that's a true thing. I can truly say, though, it's the scariest times that I thought I was going to die were literally on the drugs that had less chance to kill me. I can truly tell you the 2 times I most thought I was going to die was when I smoked a specific type of super duper sativa weed and I genuinely thought I was going to die. I could smoke indicas all day and I was fine, but when I smoked this type, oh my goodness, I was laying in bed to myself saying, you've never been this high before. You're going to die. You've never been this high before. You're going to die. And then I'd be like, no. I've been this high before. I'm okay. And then this voice would go, but you've never been this high. And then I'd be like, oh shit, I've never been this high before. Oh my fucking God, I'm going to die. Oh, no, wait. No, I've been this high before. I'm okay. But you've never been this high before. But, oh shit, I'm going to die. And that went on incessantly for 8 straight hours. 8 hours. 8 hours. And then my dumb ass, because again, my addict mentality, right? It's going to be different this time, right? Nothing's changing, but it's going to be different this time. I smoked that same weed. The same way that I had smoked it. I just didn't smoke as much, right? It's going to be different. Same exact thing for over 4 hours. Those are the 2 times I thought I was most likely going to die. I had another time that it was another substance that I put up my nose, and I felt I was worried that I was going to pass out, but I didn't really think I was going to truly die. And the weirdest thing is like the substances that I was using the most, the reason why I went to treatment, the amount of opiates that I was using. Every single day I could have died from them. And this is before, the whole fentanyl, type of thing came up. It's weird because back when I used opiates, like I used fentanyl by choice. It was like it wasn't being snuck into fake pills. It was like, oh, hey, that cool. And so there were definitely times, and there were things in my mind where I'd be like, I'm only going to use this amount. And usually would stick to it unless I was partying, and then it was, okay, we'll use this. Or I would only use this substance with this substance. So I never felt like there were definitely times that I'd said a foxhole prayer. As I've talked about, I had no concept of a higher power. I had no belief system of a higher power. But there were times where, I maybe did a couple too many, and I was like, you know what? I'll make sure I'm okay tonight. I'm going to be okay, right? I'm going to be okay. And that's not a way to live, man. I look back on that, and it's like, it's incredible that I was doing that to myself, powerless, the disease of addiction, how unmanageable my life was every single day. And maybe not every single day did I think I was going to die, but every single day I could have died. Every single day I could have. Every single day driving down into areas that I should not have been down in, especially when I was driving my mom's car. Going into places and houses that I definitely should not have been in. Being around people who had been up for far too many days and had far too many guns. Having that type of a situation every single day and having no regard for it. Having no, like when I look back at that now, when I look back at the situations that I put myself in every single day. When I look back on the situation of having my ass stomped out with a 45 to the back of my head, the insanity, like why? Why? And at the time, it didn't seem crazy. It didn't seem weird. It was life. It was normal life. But looking at it now and seeing, no, bro, that's not normal life. And that doesn't have to be anybody's normal life. That doesn't have to be anybody's normal life, And I know for us addicts in active addiction, it becomes such a standard. It becomes, that's what we do. The ways and means to get more. The complete lack of regard for us as human beings. It all goes out the window. And I get that. But it doesn't have to. And I'm here to tell you from my experience, strength, and hope, that when I look back at those times, it baffles my mind that seemed normal. It baffled my mind that was what I was willing to put myself through on a daily basis. But I always have to remember that. I have to remember those things because I don't want to forget about those. I don't want to, have those positive thought processes like, oh, yeah, I remember when I used to use this drug and it was all great. And I always have to remember where it led to. I have to remember having that gun at the back of my head and a broken orbital bone. I have to remember the things that I did. I have to remember the times that I didn't give a shit about my life. Not that I was trying to kill myself. Not that I was even considering that maybe I would die. But my actions, because of my depth of my disease of addiction, had no regard for my life. None. Not a shred of regard for my life. I have to remember those things. Because those are the things that keep me vigilant. Those are the things that keep me diligent within my recovery. When those things, because I know that's not that far away. I know that whole vibe is there. I know that whole area is there. I know there's still a dealer on every corner in that area. And if I'm not diligent about my program, if I start skipping those meetings and stop answering the phone, I know where I could be really, really, really quick. So I have to remember those things, and I have to use those as ways to not go back to that life. So, yeah, there've definitely been a few times I thought I was going to die. Definitely not as many as there should have been. I'll tell you that. Definitely not as many as there should have been, considering the things I was doing and the ways, how much I was using, the things I was using. I mean, it was definitely a very dark time period of my life, and I am absolutely blessed to still be sitting here alive today. I can tell you that completely. So that's what we got for that question. Next question. It's another good question, especially with what's coming up. With Memorial Day coming up, Memorial Day weekend coming up, what do you do to deal with previous using holidays? Because there are certain holidays that were just more prevalent to using for a lot of people, depending on what your substances were. For a lot of us, every day was a holiday with our type of using. And it didn't really matter what the day was, holiday or not. That's just the type of life we were living. But for other people, certain days carry more possibility of getting loaded, or in the past were the days that they would really get loaded. So what do we do? Well, one of the most beautiful things is almost all holidays, there is some recovery equivalent. So, if it's like Cinco de Mayo, everybody goes out and gets loaded at the bar, there's probably going to be a Cinco de Mayo event in a fellowship. That's how it is. Because we want the fellowships are there to try and have responsible options so that us addicts don't have to be thrown back out into the mass public on these days that can be triggering, for us. There are always things for New Year's Eve. There are New Year's Eve events and in all fellowships. There are Christmas events. There are Thanksgiving events, Halloween events. Memorial Day weekend, there's going to be a camp out, if I'm not mistaken. 4th of July, there's a camp out. These things that are always associated with using, not just by addicts, but by popular culture. I mean, think about how many times you see a commercial for 4th of July and everybody's standing around the barbecue grill watching fireworks with goddamn Coors Light in their hand. I mean, it's part of normal society. So there's always a recovery alternative for that. Again, why it's so important to get connected within recovery, to have those options. Because I know a lot of people that talk about how difficult the holidays are, how difficult those days are when they used to use. And when we go through things alone, we are in bad company. We are in very bad company. So, having those options and those abilities are out there. Hit me up if you're looking for something to do this coming Memorial Day weekend. Hit me up. I will be more than happy to guide you in a direction, especially in Arizona. I can tell you plenty of things that's happening in Arizona at Memorial Day weekend. So hit me up. There's plenty of things to do, and that is what we got to do. We always have to find those extra layers of safety within our recovery. It's not, oh, hey, I'm just going to, I'm in recovery now, but I'm just going to go to the lake, with all my using buddies. No, that's not what we do. We go to the lake with all of our recovery buddies. And if you see your old using buddies, you wave. But that we don't need to associate with that. And that's not saying that at no point in life will we ever, be able to associate with our old friends. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. And that's okay regardless, because there's an alternative. There's an alternative that is just as fun and enjoyable. And you don't have to worry about, am I going to get loaded when I'm going to this on this boat with all these people using? Am I going to get loaded when I go to this club I used to hang out at with all my using buddies? When we're hanging out with people in recovery, we don't have to worry about that. So there's plenty of recovery options out there. So that's what we got for the questions today. Thank you, everybody, for sending over your questions. Much appreciated. Again, you can always send them over to Matthew at CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com or submit them on any social media app that you want. I'm on all of them, except for TikTok, just for today. So, yeah, please get them over there, and I love answering questions. Don't have to be recovery related, can be on anything. So we are almost out of time. But before we close up, we got to do them clean time shout outs. That's right, y'all. This is the time of the show where we go through and recognize and celebrate anybody who has achieved a universally recognized milestone within recovery. And that is 0 to 29 days being a newcomer. That is 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, 18 months, or multiple years clean. We also like to acknowledge them big numbers, especially when you get higher up in the numbers, you don't get as many chances to celebrate. So if you've got anything coming up with a big number of 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 days, send them over to me so I can give you a nice clean time shout out. Anybody that's got clean time coming up, make sure to send it over. I love doing clean time shout outs. So that's what we're doing here. First up, and most importantly, we got 2 newcomers again. So glad y'all are still here. We got Lauren as a newcomer. Well done. And we've got Kimberly as a newcomer. Well done. And the next up with 9 months clean, my boy Mark. You get a 3/4 of a boop. And then next up, coming out from Vegas, my boy Chris, also known as Nimbus the Kid, with them 3 years. Boop, boop, boop. God, bruh. Man, some of my favorite memories of getting clean was outside of that meeting hall, freestyling with Nimbus, man. I got some great videos of that. Love you, kid. Love you. And next up, we got my boy Ryan, which love this dude other than his team affiliation, because Steelers, nah. But my boy Ryan with 8 years clean. And then finally, we've got Jody with 18 years clean. Yeah, there we go. Well done, everybody. Congratulations, everybody who picked up clean time today. If you didn't pick up clean time today, don't use, and you will. And if you do, between now and next week's episode airing or filming, going live, make sure to send it over to me so we can give you a shout out. I love doing clean time shout outs. So we are officially out of time, y'all. But thank you, everybody, for a great episode. I love each and every one of you. If nobody's told you that today they love you, I love you. And thank you for being a part of my recovery. Huge shout out again to our episode sponsors, Etc. by Emily. Huge thank you to our VIP supporters. Huge thank you to our episode music sponsors, Valentino Khan, Alice in Wonderland, anything. And thank you, everybody. Please share. If you hear something you like, send it around. Like, comment, share, subscribe, tweet, retweet, all that. And I will see each and every one of you next week. Let's go.